We don't want to show up and need to have, 50 people in the room to have a conversation about building a new AI application. Now, the other thing I'll call out is that governance shouldn't be seen as a bottleneck, right? It should be seen as more of a launchpad. We have this expanded workforce because we are working in conjunction with, agents and AI. If you want to go fast, go alone, but if you want to go farther, go together. Customers don't want to come and talk to Microsoft about a technology. They want to come and talk about a business problem that they're facing.
Today's guest is Erin Chapple, Corporate Vice President of Commercial Solution Areas at Microsoft. Erin spent 30 years shaping the company's cloud and AI platform, starting as an intern, then leading Azure infrastructure, and now helping customers adopt AI at scale. In this episode, we explore what it takes to become a frontier firm, how organizations can use AI not just to boost productivity, but to rethink how they work. Erin shares how Microsoft is reorganizing its cloud and AI offerings to make it easier for customers and partners to navigate, and how the company is shortening the time between customer feedback and product improvements. We also talked about how companies can move fast with AI without compromising on governance or security, and how to turn those challenges into real momentum. Now, let's dive in. Erin, I'm really excited to have you on the show. Welcome.
It's exciting to be here. So thank you for inviting me.
My pleasure, and thank you for accepting the invitation. Erin, you started at Microsoft 30 years ago as an intern. So first, that's really impressive. Congratulations. You spent almost all of your career in the product engineering group. You played a pivotal role in Windows Server and then Azure, moving the whole world to the cloud. And 1 year ago, you made a major career shift and moved into our commercial solution areas, which is basically in sales. So what inspired you to move from engineering into the sales organization? And so far, after 1 year, what has surprised you? What have you learned from this transition?
Well, I wish, Samuel, I could say that it was like I had the inspiration, that it, was part of a master career plan that I had, but that's not the case. I think I had spent my entire career here in the product engineering organization. And, I think in my heart, I'm all about solving problems, and I'm all about really ensuring that we're building product that meets customer needs. I mean, that's where I get my energy from. I love spending time with customers, and I love understanding what the challenges are they're facing from a business perspective, and what can we do, right, at Microsoft in order to provide either infrastructure, platforms, or solutions to really meet their needs. So I have to say, I was really happy. I was leading the Azure infrastructure product design and PM organization. And I was enjoying. I feel like I had the best job on the planet in many ways. And so I will say I was surprised in some sense when I got a knock at the virtual door from Judson, who leads the MCAPs, our sales organization, our Microsoft Customer and Partner Solution team, to explore what I wanted to do next and whether or not I would be interested in coming into MCAPs. At first, I was like, you have the right person, in that sense. But through the conversation, it makes a lot of sense, right? If you think about what where we are, right, in just the evolution of technology, I think that historically there was much more separation between what was done in product engineering and what was done in sales and in the field and customer facing roles, because the timeline for delivery was just much longer, right? I come from a world of operating systems that, not too far ago were 3-year release cycles. And so there was just much more separation. And the product management role has always been that voice of the customer within the product engineering organization. And given the speed at which we're just seeing technology change with AI and the transformation that's bringing, we're creating the technology and the product at the same time that customers are adopting it and evolving and understanding how it meets their business needs. And so that loop, right, of feedback between product engineering and the customer has gotten so much, or needs to get so much smaller. It has gotten, and I think we need to continue to push on that. So through the conversation with Judson, I go, well, this makes a lot of sense, right? It gave me the opportunity to scale from having always worked in the infrastructure space space to really be able to work across the breadth of the Microsoft cloud and to represent that connection between the sales organization, the customer, and product engineering to make sure that we were connecting that information and really making Microsoft seem smaller in terms of the information that we have to build, right? Great products that really drive customer success. So it was not something I was expected, but it made a lot of sense for me in terms of continuing, right, to have the impact that I care about for Microsoft and for customers.
I love that you mentioned that making the portfolio look smaller, because over the time, I mean, you've been 30 years at Microsoft, so the portfolio has improved tremendously.
It
Like,
has. It has. And it's one thing I really think scaling into this role would have been challenging or more challenging for me if I hadn't have spent my time at the infrastructure layer, right? I am at heart a platforms gal. I really believe in the power of building those platforms that help enable scale in that sense. And so that gave me a really interesting vantage point, I would say. But you asked a little bit like, what have I learned and what's been maybe some of the surprises in that sense? Like it is amazing what customers are doing, right? Across industry, across geography, across size and scale of organization with technology today. And I think, in having a focus at the infrastructure layer on what did we need to do to build the right platform, this new role that I'm in has given me a much broader perspective on just the nature, right, of the relationship of technology in an organization and how it's really driving business transformation, right, through AI transformation, but also like the role that the partnership between customer and technology provider needs to play, right? I really do feel like it is a partnership that we are jointly navigating. And that gives a different perspective, I think, on how you think about engagement, how you think about designing the product, how you think about delivery, not just with an end customer, right? Like a large enterprise, but also with the partner ecosystem and ISV ecosystem, our software development companies out there, the service and solution integrators. Like it just gives you a different vantage point, I think, that helps me, I think, to have more breadth or sort of understand the dimensions, right, of which we need to think about the end-to-end product delivery for everything from the design through to, right? How do we package price? How do we go to market with it? What's the feedback loop? How do we put that into place? And so that's been really eye-opening for me in that sense. And I think it makes me a better product leader, because at the end of it, I think even though I would say technically I'm in sales, at the end of the day, I think my whole job is about, are we building the right products for customers that delight them? And that breadth and that increase of perspective, I think, really helps to ensure that that happens.
So what I'm hearing is that the wall between sales and products are blurring and
Totally.
are disappearing. Yeah. And you mentioned simplifying the whole portfolio. And actually, with the new fiscal year at Microsoft, the different solutions area have been simplified. Previously, there were business application, which is CRM, Power Platform, ERP, and modern work, which encompass M365, Teams, SharePoint, etc. That's merged into one simplified AI business solution. Azure Core, which was previously three different solution area with data and AI, apps and infrastructure, and data and innovation have been simplified into cloud and AI platform, and security has remained as one of the solution area. I know it's a key pillar for us. What kind of impact this simplified solution will have on our customer and our partners? Because I'm asked a lot by specifically our partner, I'll say.
Yeah. Look, I think you have to first step back and sort of understand, what are we trying to do with the commercial solution areas or the CSAs? As I said, I think earlier, customers don't want to come and talk to Microsoft about a technology. They want to come and talk about a business problem that they're facing and how, right, can technology and the partnership help, right, solve that business problem, help add value into the organization. And so the commercial solution areas have always been the way in which we represent the different products and capabilities to the customer in the conversation, because you want to have a conversation with the customer on their terms, right? What is it that they're really hoping to achieve? And so, the previous solution areas, I think, served us well. They served us well as an organizing function and a communication function to really illustrate the value that the Microsoft Cloud provides. Now, in the world of AI, that conversation is changing, right? It used to be, prior to generative AI and kind of Copilot and all of these components, that you would have a more discrete conversation around modern work and what is it that I want to do to really modernize, right, the employee experience within the organization. And that was, in some ways a more standalone conversation. But AI is really blurring the lines in some sense of, right, the capabilities and how that needs to show up in the context of the organization in order to really drive the business process and experience. And so, really the simplification of the CSAs were meant to bring together the capabilities and the value that the Microsoft Cloud provides in a way that resonates with the conversations that we have with customers. And they really do now center on kind of security as the foundation. Right? You don't have AI transformation without great security. You don't have anything without great security. And then the cloud and AI platform, so that fundamental, set of building blocks that enables organizations to build applications and build AI applications that are really going to bring innovation into their space. And then the entire kind of AI business solutions that really help with the employee experience, with the customer experience, and that fundamental way in which the business is run. And so that much more kind of logically maps to the nature of the conversation. So it allows us as Microsoft to show up better in a way with the knowledge and capabilities in order to be able to have those conversations directly with customers.
And it will also simplify, I suppose, the way we go to market, the way our partner have access and customers have access to program to help empower them and deploying quickly AI, because everybody wants to deploy quick but securely.
It's not unlike, when I came into the Azure infrastructure team many years ago, I came in and I was leading the Azure compute organization. And, you need to have the capabilities. You need to have compute. You need to have networking. You need to have storage. The way the customer purchases Azure, or what they want to do with Azure, is I often talk about it. Like, they don't come and say, well, I want to purchase a bunch of block storage because I want to have it kind of lying around for a rainy day. No, they come with a workload. And so, I was, very much a part of, within the Azure core organization, really driving this workload focus and starting to invert that, because that's the way in which we need to show up with customer, right? You want to show up in a way that says, here's how compute and network and storage come together to deliver the best experience to host SAP, or here's deliver the most experience to drive whatever your application is that you're building. And, I think that's sort of similar in this sense, right? We don't want to show up and need to have, 50 people in the room to have a conversation about building a new AI application. We want to be able to come in and really have that integrated view of how do these components work together, right? Both services that we provide, but also then, as you said, services that are delivered through the partner ecosystem, the marketplace, right? All of the kind of third-party providers that build on top of Microsoft Cloud. And we want to be able to have that conversation in a way that is actually coherent and doesn't look like we're showing up as, 100 different teams. No, we're showing up as one organization, one partner, one trusted advisor that can help the customer through that journey.
I've seen that on the field as well. In the past, we were, like you said, 50 people at the table to try to explain the whole technological landscape or offering from Microsoft. And nowadays, there's less people, more specialized, but we can really tackle the specific problem and business challenge from our customer. So I totally agree. Building on that, for organizations that want to stay ahead of the curve, the innovation curve, that is technically a wall right now because it's going so fast. How should they think about all those new solution area?
It's so in the last year in this role, I've talked to hundreds of customers. And, one of the things I love to do is just spend the first 15, 20 minutes of a conversation listening. What is it that you are trying to accomplish? What are you wrestling with from, a business standpoint? And really, the conversations they can all map back into 4 key questions or 4 key goals or intentions, which I think are the foundation of what does it mean to become a frontier firm, right? How, frontier firm is how do I, lead with AI in my thinking in that sense and infuse it, right? And move from it being sort of a tool to being an integral part of how you think about your overall business strategy. But those 4 main conversations or main areas are, first, how can AI really help enrich the employee experience? How can I think about my workforce and what their experience is, the productivity of what their role is? How can I help improve their satisfaction with their job, right? By making, the things that are more manual and repeatable easier to do. How can I give them access, right, to a broader set of information? And so I think that first is really anchoring on that employee experience within an organization. The second conversation really comes into how are you reinventing customer engagement, right? And we saw, with the adoption of the cloud, we saw the cloud change, a lot of the capabilities that we had in terms of how do I deliver the experience to, my customer, whether or not that's through the application I'm building. But it really, in many ways, that was when we started to see that most companies became technology companies because there was some way in which they were leveraging technology to really transform how they interact with the customer base that they have. And so AI is taking that to the next level, saying, how can I leverage this in the customer experience that they have with my company? The third conversation centers around business process, right? And this is a place that I think is just prime, for AI to have an impact on what is done in an organization, from, the automation of business processes through agents, and then the evolution of that to, in the future, we see agents really becoming members, right, of the team in order to work alongside the organization, to really transform the way in which the business gets done within the organization. And then the fourth conversation is just like, how do I bend the curve on innovation? You talked about that wall in some sense. How can I leverage that in the context of whatever industry I'm in? So I'm a pharmaceutical industry and I want to apply it to sort of drug trial. And how do I accelerate that? I'm in manufacturing and I want to think about it in the context of supply chain. But I think all of those pieces become really important. So there's 4 conversations: employee experience, customer engagement, business process, innovation, really are the foundation, right, of which these solution areas, work against or work to help realize what an organization can do to realize that value. And so, the AI business solutions conversation is really about how are we making it easier for customers to adopt AI across business process and workforce, right? Because we see those two being the core backbone in many ways of how the work gets done in an organization. So whether it's Copilot or agents or a new AI experience, in M365 or D365, bringing these together really gives that unified outcome-driven experience so that it's faster, cleaner, and really more aligned to their transformation goals. So that sort of helps with that employee experience, business process, customer engagement. Now, on the cloud and AI platform side, we brought together all of the components of the Azure infrastructure. So this is almost, in some sense, an extension of that workload concept I talked about around compute and network and storage coming together. Now, right, infrastructure, data, AI, the developer experience, apps, PaaS services coming together. That really is the backbone of what helps customers move, right, from on-premises to the cloud, but also then thinking about modernization and bringing AI innovation into the organization. So that means there's fewer handoffs, right? There's deeper technical engagement because we have the right, people involved, and really hopefully that means faster time to value for the customer, especially with new offerings that we're providing, but also ways in which the customer can pull these components together. So hopefully that gives you the sense of, like, across those 4 conversations, how the solution areas really map in to drive that conversation and make it real for customers in a way that helps them to realize that value. And then, I can't end this without saying that, like, security. right? It's just foundation. It is our number one priority. And it's, while it is sort of a standalone commercial solution area for us, it's also embedded by design across all of the solution areas so that we can ensure, right, whether or not it's how are you securing and governing your data estate in order to be able to provide the right platform for all of that, the Copilot and Dynamics 365 experiences, right, so that you can really innovate with confidence in your business process, through to, right, how is it, core to the platform on the cloud and AI platform side to ensure that you can actually build that AI native application, right, with the confidence around governance, data, security, all of those pieces that you're protected from the start.
So, empower workforce, customer engagement, business process, and bending the innovation curve. I'm really interested by this last one. What does that mean, to bend the innovation curve?
Look, in every business, doesn't matter what industry you're in, right? Manufacturing, retail, there's a way in which you want to innovate in the context of your current business, right? For manufacturing, that could be, how do I actually improve supply chain, right? In drug trial, it could be, how do I actually identify, right, the what should I be taking forward? In retail, it could be, how am I thinking about, kind of mapping in some sense what's happening in market and trend and applying it to design and how I think about, marketing of the retail store and whatnot. But bending the curve on innovation is like, how do I actually leverage, AI in the context of the core business to bring that change faster, right, into the environment? How do I leverage it to identify, right, the preferred solution or solutions that might be more likely to succeed earlier in the process? How do I apply it? All of the things that you think about doing today that are more, I'll call it manual in that sense, or to require a lot of research and discovery, right? How am I leveraging the AI tools in the environment that we have in order to really be able to move faster in that sense? And so we see, right, it in terms of organizations building applications that are AI native applications in order to be able to leverage, right, the information they have, the data that they have that's specific to their business, in order to speed up, right, the ability to actually take solutions and bring solutions into market.
My latest podcast episode was with a VP of Data of AI of a big retailer here in Canada. He was explaining how it totally changed the way they operate. So it's really using AI to be able to innovate faster in your specific area, right?
Yeah, both like in that, probably both from an internal process standpoint, but also then in the context of whatever the domain is, right, that they are working in.
Speaking of innovation, I think we all notice it's moving faster than ever. And it's really hard to predict what's coming over the next 12 months, 5 years, 10 years is even worse. So how does Microsoft stay ahead of this curves? And how does Microsoft help their customer do the same?
Look, I think we have a long history at Microsoft of being customer zero, right? Of leveraging our own products and being the first. I remember, I often joke, you talked about, I'm sort of at the 30-year mark from my first internship. My first internship at Microsoft, I was working on a alpha version of Outlook, what became Outlook, running on top of a beta version of what became Exchange. And I never got mail. Right. Because I used to tell all of my intern friends, like, call me if you want to have lunch, because I'm not going to get your mail, because we were running the product that we were about to ship in that sense. And so, I think in order to really understand and predict what's coming and be in a position to be able to, speak from a place of understanding, we need to be at Microsoft customer zero across all of the products and services. So that means we're not only developing new technologies, but we're adopting them internally before anyone else. So for example, we rolled out Copilot to every employee in the company, and having that unique approach to really have the whole breadth of Microsoft to test, to learn, to identify, to fix potential issues before customers even experience them, puts us in a place where we can help, right, to chart that path. And it doesn't mean we'll get it perfect, but it does mean that we'll uncover, right, a lot of the challenges. And so I think that gives us a huge advantage as we innovate at the speed that you see the market developing, and to be able to support customer deployments at scale. You think about what we see internally as driving utilization of Copilot. It's about, what is that immersive experience for the end user, right? How can it firsthand improve their daily productivity. Well, a lot of the tips and approaches that we've been able to help then sort of scale, right, through our go-to-market and our skilling and whatnot, and engagement with customers on things like promptathons and whatnot to really help change sort of the way in which the workforce understands what's successful to them, came from our internal adoption and what we learned. I know within my team, within the MCAPS organization, we run a Copilot cup and a challenge over the course of the year to really drive utilization and drive not just utilization, but you're driving the utilization to drive the learning so that we understand what's happening. And so for any organization there, like my biggest encouragement is to just start, right? To just get it into the environment, because you don't know, right, how it's going to help or what the impact is, or how your users or workforce are going to react to, or what you might need to change, right, from a culture standpoint, from a governance standpoint, in order to drive that. And so for me, I really think that what came out of sort of the best practices to really scale Copilot adoption came from our internal awareness and understanding of using that platform. That helps us, right, to bring that to customers in a broad sense, much more quickly.
And we're a big organization. I mean, we have a lot of employees, so I think we're a good benchmark. And I experience it as customer zero myself. And I've been through all the challenges that some of our customer might see. But since we're close to the product team, it's easier to try and adapt along the way. So it's really interesting.
And look, we pivot based on it. Early on, when we were just, the whole idea in some sense of generative AI and Copilot and this, concept of chat was newer. Like, we started to talk to both customers, but also internally, and see, like, what are the AI patterns that are really driving, right, the usage and driving the interest. And, early on, we saw two really pop, right, in terms of the engagement. One was building your own AI assistant, and the other was chat with your data. And those were sort of the two AI patterns that were driving a lot of interest, as well as sort of movement into production from the customer. And so what did we learn from that? Well, we learned that, hey, instead of having everyone have to kind of use these patterns and implement them in their environment, we were missing, right, in the strategy of M365 Copilot, this concept of Copilot chat that was this broadly accessible, availability of users or customers to be able to quickly chat with their own data right across abroad. And so that, we made that decision then from a product strategy standpoint to launch Copilot chat. And so here's a way in which you're seeing, right, internal usage, understanding and identification of patterns, really helping us to understand what's the next thing that we need to build. And it's that feedback loop in some sense from the sales organization and seeing what is actually resonating with customers and what they're adopting back into product engineering that really helps that evolution happen. To your point, right? When you don't know where you're going, you need to be able to be curious, learn, and react quickly, and be able to to bring those things into market. And so I think, really ensuring that we are staying engaged, talking to customers, meeting with them, learning firsthand what's happening, and then taking that feedback back into, right, the product engineering and design cycle is really important.
So this feedback loop is applied internally as customer zero and with our customer as well. I mean, I've noticed as someone on the field that the time between customer mentioning something about our product and the time we bring that to production is really faster than ever. What's driving that, this new level of agility at Microsoft? And actually, can you expand on this feedback loop?
Yeah. But it was one of the things, I have to, I'll admit, when I made the shift from product engineering into MCAPS and into the commercial solution areas, I thought I knew how the field operated. I thought I understood kind of the mechanisms, and I knew like this much of the entire process. And so I think we were just missing, in some sense, that connection point, right? The connection point happened, I would say, more through escalation than it did through actually bringing, right, the end-to-end set of teams together in this way. And in many ways, the commercial solution areas team was focused on supporting the field and connecting that back, and not, in some sense, putting equal weight on also a role supporting the engineering team and business planning. And so part of it was just this articulating, right? The role of the organization and the role of what we call the loop, or this feedback loop, that visually I see it as an infinity symbol that really is connecting, right? All parts of the cycle that come together. And so like my sort of nerdy or geeky analogy is that the commercial solution areas team is the corpus callosum of Microsoft. And if you know, the corpus callosum is the part that connects the left and the right hemispheres of the brain. And in order to perform most functions that the human body does, those two parts of the brain need to actually talk together. If that corpus callosum is severed, like, you can still function, but it's harder because each sort of wants to do and they're independent motion. But if you can bring them together, right? And that's always been one of our core values, is this one Microsoft and the way in which we bring. But I think that loop is really what helps setting that. And now that means, right? That means we need to have product engineering more deeply engaged with field. It means we have to have field more deeply engaged with product engineering. Now, you can't scale that to make sure like every person, is connected to every person in the organization, but how do you put the systems in place? And so we do have, as part of the commercial solution area organization, we do have that regular connection point with the field where we pull that information together. And because we in the commercial solution area look across all solution areas and look across all geographies, we're able to kind of get that signal and realize where are the patterns. And in many ways, building product is a prioritization effort. You really want to focus on solving the things that have the most leverage in terms of helping the customer get through what they need to do. And so I think that process of being able to connect that has helped us to both identify what the most important issues are, identifying it quickly, and then by bringing the teams together earlier into that cycle where product engineering can hear more directly from the field, we speed up the time it takes to just, look, we're in a large organization. That brings benefit with it, but it also brings challenges in terms of how do you make the organization act like a small startup and the agility that can come with that. And so I think, it's this combination of identifying what needs to be done, having the right systems and processes in place, and then creating the right connections across the organization.
I really love this new way of operating, and I'm pretty sure our partner and our customer like it as well, because we're fixing things so much faster than we did in the past. Switching gear a bit, we've mentioned frontier firm a couple of times. What defines a frontier firm? I mean, it's part of pretty much all of our presentation, the one I'm doing, and I'm asked a lot, what does it mean exactly? What does the journey look like for an organization that want to become a frontier firm?
Look, simply put, I think that a frontier firm is about infusing AI in how you fundamentally think. And in many ways, it's not different than the transition that we made from sort of on-premises into cloud, right? Where there was sort of a shift in how you thought about the value of cloud and how that actually should be infused in your business strategy and how you're thinking about bringing applications and experiences to market. Like, if you can remember, 10, 15 years ago, just the way in which you thought about, the capabilities of the cloud enable you to have just a different way of thinking about how you actually approach application development or innovation. And so the same is true, right, in the context of AI. And so part of being a frontier firm is how do you infuse this, in everything that you are doing. I think today we're in a place where we're sort of applying AI to the problems we know about today, as opposed to thinking about how AI can help us to reimagine the way in which we could be doing things. And so if I think about the difference of sort of today's, first stage application of AI, it's more about how to use AI to speed up tasks. But if we think about the vision of where a frontier firm would be, frontier firm would think about, how do I build hybrid teams, right? How do I have humans with AI agents that are working side by side? And in some cases, maybe even AI agents that are leading specific kind of workflows with human assist and the ability to provide that strategic oversight. And so, I think it is a journey, right? It's a journey from AI as an assistant, right? Helping an individual to be more productive, to AI as a digital colleague, right? How do agents join a team and do tasks? You see that today in in something like Microsoft Teams with the facilitator role and whatnot, where right they're actually joining and taking on the task, and that, or you see it in the in GitHub with some of the developer experience. And to how do I get to a place where I have AI led teams, right, where those agents are operating autonomously, not completely autonomously, right, guided by human strategy, but how can you actually distribute, right, that work in that sense? And so, we're really using tools like Copilot to boost productivity, but we're launching AI centers of excellence that actually help organizations to assess that maturity and scale. And so, when we talk about Frontier Firm, we're talking about this bold new way of work where AI isn't just a tool, it's that teammate, and it is infused kind of in how you think about getting work done.
So summarizing, it's becoming an AI frontier firm means embracing AI in all your process, from individual level to teams level to even management level.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And Copilot is probably the easiest way to start using AI. When we first released Copilot, I think it took the world by storm. It's not that long ago. When you think about it, I mean, GPT 3.5 was released in November 2022. And then in 2023, we launched Copilot. So not that long ago. But one thing it does, it's improved productivity, obviously, but it's also exposed years of neglected governance in many organizations. How can companies address these challenges without slowing down their AI adoption? Because they don't want to pause, they don't want to stop, but still, governance is really important.
Yeah, it's interesting. There's sort of two things I would say that I often try to present in somewhat of a humorous light, but it's, what we find in many organizations is when they enable, right, tools like Copilot, they find data they never knew existed. Right. It just in that sense. And I often get asked, like, what is sort of the number one reason why an AI project fails? And I often say it fails because of data, right? And poor data strategy and the data governance. And so what you're saying is a real issue. I think that over time, having just worked in the infrastructure space and IT space, everyone knew they should be doing something with their data, but it never hit, right, the highest thing on the priority list, which is the confluence of AI and security and just the different dimensions of what's existing. It's really critical, I think, at this point. So Microsoft provides a comprehensive AI governance guidance to really help customers be able to responsibly adopt, manage, and scale those AI technologies. And that's really rooted in sort of a three-dimensional view, or 360 view of ethical principles, regulatory compliance, and then what do we see as operational best practices. So if I think about kind of the stages of that, first, it's about establishing a robust AI organizational setup and operating model. When I talk to customers and partners, I was sort of on the road last year and doing a conversation about adopting AI. And the questions weren't about tech. They were about the culture and the operating model and the governance within an organization of how you think about, right, operating your AI strategy. So that's the first thing, right? How do you create that setup and operating model? And then I think there's that then governance model that needs to overlay on top to be able to take the siloed teams you have, because data is oftentimes a silo problem in that sense, and really ensure that you're bringing together the siloed teams and those responsibilities so that you are implementing a set of structured governance stages or approach. And then being able to really streamline AI use cases intake, right? So that you can get some, I hazard to use the word control, but maybe visibility in some sense, and then prioritization around where you're investing. Because the other thing we see is oftentimes these pilot projects like pop up all over the place, and it's hard to understand, like, where are you really? And that's where the governance comes into play, of how can you actually understand what's being utilized across the organization, and then ensure that you're making the right investments so that they align with business value and that you can drive impact and measure what's being happened. And so I think some questions that customers should be asking themselves are, do we have a centralized Copilot and agent governance guardrails that are in place across all of the company to ensure we've got compliance? Do we have a data loss prevention strategy? Are we continuously testing solutions to make sure that we're not oversharing, right? That we're not actually kind of slipping into non-compliance. And so what we see is as organizations are transitioning to a more strategic AI approach, really aligning the investment across the applications and platforms that they have and the data to put together that strategy as a whole, really puts some of that governance and security in place so that they can actually scale from a growth standpoint.
So it's really three different layers: operation model, AI being part of the setup of the whole operation model, um, a whole governance layer, and finally being able to prioritize all the AI use cases, so you don't end up with like use cases or proof of concept everywhere that might put you at risk. Following on that, because governance is one part of the story, I think the other part of the story is security, right? And with generative AI come increased risk for different reasons, but especially around data security and compliance. How can organization can embrace AI without putting themselves or their customer at risk, and again without falling behind their competitors? Because as same as for the governance, people don't want to stop or don't want to pause; they want to go with the flow and start implementing AI in their organization.
Yeah, and this is if you talk to, right, CIOs, CTOs, CISOs, CEOs, this is a top concern. Majority of them overwhelmingly are worried about oversharing, right, and leakage of data. They're also worried about new threats coming from AI. They're worried about regulatory compliance. And so this is a challenging world to operate in. For example, if you work in financial services or healthcare or any regulated industry or government, there are concerns over the regulatory capabilities that any solution may have, or the regulatory adherence, right, that solution, and implementing that and how that might impede your ability to actually deliver solutions in market. So we have in Microsoft a cloud adoption framework for AI governance, and that's really meant to provide structured guidance so that organizations can really take a look and assess their overall AI risks, right? They can put into place and document governance policies, and then providing the enforcement and monitoring compliance around that, so that organizations can adopt AI securely by implementing that multi-layered governance model. If you just step back, visibility is really the key, I think, in this. You can't protect what you can't see, right? And so tools like Microsoft Purview's data security posture management for AI, Defender for cloud apps, so really helps organizations to monitor those AI interactions, to flag issues that they're seeing, and then apply that data loss prevention policy centrally so that they can be more confident, right, in their ability to adopt the technology. Now, the other thing I'll call out is that governance shouldn't be seen as a bottleneck, right? It should be seen as more of a launchpad. And so, before deploying AI, organizations should clean up that obsolete data. They should apply the sensitivity labels, right? All these things we should have been doing, right, in the past, making sure we're restricting access to high risk repositories. So that isn't just good hygiene, it's a strategic defense. And if you can do that in that place, it becomes, right, this accelerator in many ways. And so I think that reframe of bottleneck to launchpad and what can we do is really important. And then lastly, I think we need to think about how both we at Microsoft, but also organizations, are creating responsible AI frameworks. So if you think about just our internal development process within Microsoft, teams go through this rigorous harm assessments and executive reviews before we launch AI features. And that's not just about ethics, it's about maintaining trust by actually having a risk team who is looking at this assessment. That can actually accelerate AI adoption because it means that you've got clear scope, you've got the right governance in place, you've got safe deployment, and these things become enablers, not blockers. And so I think that those who are most successful in this space will be the ones who architect for scale, because that reinforces trust, right? And that they think about kind of just this world of not just AI, but the human and AI collaboration that needs to happen, right, in order to become that frontier firm that we talked about.
I love this concept of governance as a launch pad instead of a bottleneck. I think it's really important. People don't want to tackle the governance, but they have to.
And it's interesting. It's like there are parallels in some sense between the technology world, I think, and the human world, in the sense of sometimes there's this, it's usually quoted as an African proverb, says, you want to go fast, go alone, but if you want to go farther, go together. And in some sense, the governance is that piece of it, right? Like, how are you bringing together the different dimensions of your organization so that you're actually working together and you have the right foundation in order to continue? And yes, if you just put things into production and you don't think about them and you don't think about all of the strategy pieces, you're going to spend a lot of time afterwards cleaning that up. You might get something out faster, but is it going to actually have the durability, the sustainability, the scalability, all of those pieces that are really important and that are really important, particularly in this day and age when the trust, right? Trust with the employee workforce, trust with the customer, all of those things become really, really, really key.
Love it. Erin, we're almost at the end of our time. But to wrap things up, I will always like to ask two quick questions. One practical tips for our listener that they can use right away, and one vision you have for the future and where it's all heading. So first question, what's your number one productivity tip when it comes to using AI in your own work?
Look, you just have to start. I think that people sometimes don't know what to put into a prompt. They don't know where to start. But I would say that you know how you work. And if you can just start using AI as a way and ask it the questions you're asking yourself, right? That starts on this journey where then you start to figure out, oh, well, wait a second. Like, I asked it this, I could ask it that. Like, I started off just, coming back from vacation or coming back from a long weekend or even a weekend and saying, like, look, please, Copilot, look across, Teams and Outlook and give me the messages that have been directed to me that are most important that I need to deal with, right? Or I use it when I'm going into a one-on-one to prepare with someone and say, like, hey, what were the last 5 mails that Samuel sent me? And like, have I answered all of them? Like, some of those things that are just things that you would normally check as part of the way you do your work, right? Give those to AI, give those to Copilot, because that's going to help you. And then you're going to realize, oh, well, wait a second. I could add this to that. I could refine. And that I think gets you on that path where, I think for me, it has shifted from being something I have to think about doing to something that I more naturally have Copilot there. And I'm sort of asking it questions, while I'm in a meeting because someone says something and I want to research the piece or I want to capture something for give me a to do, all of that. Right. So you just sort of, it takes part of that day to day, just doing it in order to be able to embed it into and to learn how it works for you in that sense. Because I think at the end of the day, it is going to work differently, right? For different individuals.
So just start. Yeah, that's what I'm telling my customer.
Just do it.
Don't just do it. Yes. My last question, and I know it's not an easy one, and that's why I'm asking it, because I think the answers are always interesting. Looking ahead 10 years, I know it's a long time in AI and in technology. How do you think AI will change the way we live and work?
Look, this one, I don't think you should be allowed to ask this question, Samuel. I think about it, like I have a 10-year-old now, and I think about to like the year he was born and, where we were in the evolution of technology and now. And I'm not sure I could have predicted in some sense, particularly in the last, 12 to 24 months. It just feels like things have taken sort of an exponential, shift in where they are. But I'm going to tell you what I hope is true.
Yes.
Right. What I hope is true is, as a society, as humanity, that we are able to focus more on the things that drive benefit to our lived experience, because we're applying more of our time on things that are uniquely right at the course of how, we as humans think through and problem solve. And we're able to do that because we found a way to move to this world of frontier firms where we have, right, this expanded workforce because we are working in conjunction with agents and AI, and that is helping to both take, right, the manual repetitive tasks that are the least favorite portions, I think, of both your or my role, and that we're able to spend more time on the things that are higher output, right? Rudimentary, I would go back to I was part of the team that I wasn't part of the initial kind of creator, but I was part of the team that brought, PowerShell, which is this automation scripting language, into the masses. And like, what was that really? It really helped the IT be more productive and spend more time working on the things that were higher impact to the business, because they could automate and use PowerShell, right, to get rid of that. I mean, look, this is that to the nth degree. And I hope that we look at the ways in which that this creates capacity for us to both leveraging AI, but also leveraging human capabilities for us to actually focus on the things that really, improve the quality, I would say, of lived experience across the planet. It's big, but we got to aim big.
I'm glad I asked the question. It's a beautiful answer with a super positive outlook. Erin, thank you so much for joining me. This was insightful. It was interesting. I loved your energy. So thank you so much for taking some time of your very busy schedule to join us on the show today.
No,
was a
it was
pleasure.
great. I'll come back anytime. So I hope we get to continue the conversation.
Awesome. Thank you, Erin. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you.
Before we wrap up, here are 4 practical takeaways from my conversation with Erin Chapple. First, build around real business problems, not just technology. AI adoption works best when it's tied to a clear business challenge. Customers don't care about features, they care about outcomes. Second, treat governance as a launchpad, not a bottleneck. Done right, governance doesn't slow you down. It gives you the confidence to move faster and scale responsibly. Third, focus on 4 key areas to become a frontier firm. First one is empowering your workforce, then reinventing the customer engagement, transforming the business processes, and bending the innovation curve. That's the framework. Fourth, visibility is everything. You can secure what you can see. Make sure you have the tools in place to monitor AI usage and protect your data. If you found this episode useful, subscribe to Mastering AI with the Experts and check out my newsletter, Mastering AI for Productivity, for more insights like these. Thank you for watching and see ya!